I got the paper, Alberni Valley News, and it says city buys Soma's lands. And then I saw on the post of our beloved mayor that she's so excited to announce that the deal has been sealed and we're going forward with this project. And I said, yay! And some people said progress, some people said, So we're going to talk about that right now. So Port Alberni, if you're watching, jive in with your comments and questions as Caroline will now introduce our very special guest.
So today we have with us City Councilwoman Cindy Solda and our lovely Mayor Sharie. So let's ask away.
All right. So let's ask Madam Mayor to tell us how this all got started. Like, you made a post, you announced it, and as I understand, you were not allowed to announce it earlier, but finally the day came that you're allowed to announce it. So tell us about the vision, or what are we expecting here?
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, thank you for having both of us on today. It is always a nice opportunity just to have the chance to go a little bit more in depth on some of these topics where I think we often sit back and think, I wish we could explain things in a better way, but it's so much more than you can explain in a Facebook post. And and we've had fewer ways to communicate with people these days through COVID, where we haven't had as much opportunity to meet in person. So we're really happy to be here and just happy to have the opportunity to talk about this. So I think the first and probably most important thing is to say that it of course didn't all start with a Facebook post. We were very excited to announce the purchase of the SOMAS lands, and of course that wasn't the first comment on the SOMAS lands that came. The first public step that we took on the SOMAS lands was when we announced that we were serving notice of expropriation. And at that point, we were very clear that this was not the first step that was taken, and it was not the approach that we had wanted to take to serve notice of expropriation. Rather, we wanted to negotiate a deal. And just a few weeks later, after we took that step, we were really happy to be able to announce that we had come to a negotiated agreement with the previous owner of the site to be able to purchase. And at that point, we withdrew our notice of expropriation and started our public process that will be ongoing certainly over the next few years as we redevelop this site.
Okay. Well, in the paper it says, you were quoted as saying, each of these properties represents a significant strategic value both today and as we move forward in this changing community. I just love how you phrase it, like changing community. We have to have change, because I mean, Port Alberni has been accused of being stagnant for the past, 5 decades? I don't know. Or they can't say. So what did you mean by this? Would you care to elaborate on
Yes,
the
absolutely.
growing value?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have been. I mean, I think a lot of people would argue we have not been stagnant. There's been a lot of change that's happened in this community, both good and bad, over the last 4 or 5 decades. And that said, our population has remained fairly stagnant, as many communities on Vancouver Island have seen explosive growth in their communities. We've had somewhat of a decline over time and little bits of growth, but very, very minimal. Overall, over the last 40 to 45 years, our population has remained pretty consistently where it's at. And we're just starting for the first time now to see some growth. So while there's been some good things happening in the community, we haven't really seen the growth and progress and change that I think many people expected. And our council is really excited to feel like we're now at the start of being able to take advantage of some of the progress that's happening here and really start to make some meaningful change in the community. And I think that's why people elected our council. We all very much ran on platforms of progress and change and realigning the values that this community has, and now we're getting to live that. So the SOMAS lands are, I can't stress enough, it's almost hard to put into words how exciting of an opportunity I believe they are. I think that the SOMAS lands are a fundamental shift for the future of our community. I've always felt that 40 acres of waterfront land that has sat vacant for the last 4 or 5 years, but has sat underutilized for much time before that. As we know, in decades ago, it employed over 1,200 people. And over the last 10 years and longer, we've started to see the site decline and the amount of people being employed on the site decline. So while it was once vibrant, now it's really underutilized, and we've seen it just fenced on the waterfront since then. So we're really excited just because of the proximity to the Harbor Quay, the centralness in our community, to be able to have the site be redeveloped.
Oh, that's great.
Can I add something to
Sure,
that?
of course.
I think the public is too. Not everybody, but there's a lot of young people in the public and the people that have moved to our community, there's been a lot of changes happening. And I can see a lot of positive going to happen here. You take Nanaimo as an example, the old skating ring. Look what happened with their waterfront, or any mill town that they're developing right now, housing and different things for the waterfront. This wouldn't be happening in Port Alberni, and a lot of people have asked us to do something, and here we are doing something, and we have a long ways to go, but this is a great start. I'm sure you have lots of other questions on other things, and I will touch how I feel about others. So yeah, I think this is a positive.
While you're talking about Nanaimo,
Yes.
what besides an arena, what was that land?
It was just an arena
land and arena,
and
okay.
parking, and across the street they're about to develop that whole hotel into something amazing by the time they're done. So let's move forward, you know, and you got to look at the aging population. You know, we don't always like change, but we're going to embrace the change. And as I said in council meeting, I'm probably going to be 6 foot under or in my wheelchair, and somebody said, "Oh, I'll push you down there by the time the whole land is developed." You know, there we go. You know, we have to look at the positive. The drawings are just conceptual drawings.
Yeah.
You know, you got to remember things change, and I think that's important.
Yeah, and Cindy makes a really great point on the drawings. I think, you know, what we've seen over the last few years, this council, is we have tried to make some changes, and we've had a really hard time showing the community the vision of what we're trying to accomplish. So we knew we were going to take this step. Of course, we have been working on it for some time, and we weren't able to keep the public engaged throughout that whole process for a number of reasons. But, you know, the greatest of which, we were negotiating on the sale of a large amount of land, and we wanted to make sure that we had the communities, that we were able to do as best as we could for the community. And negotiating in a public atmosphere typically doesn't put your best foot forward. So for a number of reasons, but our community is shifting, and
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, our community is really shifting, and we're really excited to have these concepts to be able to show the community not exactly what it's going to end up looking like, because we don't know that yet. This is early in the process, but rather to show them a vision of what we believe we can achieve on this site. So that's why we put the drawings out, and I think what I heard overwhelmingly from the public was that they were appreciative of having those drawings. And I even had people say to me that when they heard we were expropriating, they thought, why would the city want that site? And then they saw the drawings and they could see the vision. So we're helping the community see what we believe we can achieve here.
Some people are visual, some people are auditory, and some people need to see a vision to know how to go forward. So that's how I look at it too.
Well, I'm curious because it took so there's a mayor and 6 councils, right? So was the process smooth? Like, was the discussion, the going back and forth? I'm curious.
Do you mean like within our 7?
Yeah, I'm curious.
So we can't, we're not allowed to say how everyone voted.
Of course.
Although, you know, we have talked about that, you know, we could release that. We just need a formal motion of council to release it. And so that's something that we could talk about for sure. I would be happy to release that information. And but, you know, was it smooth? Well, it was a long process. And I think it's important to, although we're not able to talk about exactly, you know, what that looked like or exactly when we started talking about this as a council, if you read through our strategic plan that we developed just months after getting elected, you'll see several references in there to redeveloping, you know, key pieces of our waterfront and really utilizing the waterfront as much as possible. And while we can't say exactly how each member of council voted, I will say that is a council vision. So, you know, the waterfront being our most important asset is a value that our entire council shares. And we worked really hard on this together to get to this point. And I think we're all really proud of where we're at today.
Yeah,
I heard something about, was this an original idea of the present council, or was this an idea some time ago by another person or another council? Another regime.
So I can go back for the 14 years I was on, and it's always been discussed, but how do we get to there? How do we get the money for there and to get to this point now? So I think it's just been handed on, and now something's happening. I mean, everybody wanted the waterfront developed. Council did. But we also can't forget the industry that was there. We believe, you know, in the industry. But this industry wasn't doing anything, so we need to do something, and here we are. You know, we have now new industry happening in Port Alberni, so let's move on with that.
Yes.
And
Yeah, and let's support the new industry that we
Exactly.
have. So, this was it our council's idea? I mean, it's hard to really say that. I think that this vision belongs to our council. So this vision was created by our council. The pictures that you see, the mixed use site, I know I was a part of the last council and Cindy previous councils before that. My last council spoke about the SOMAS lands. I mean, the SOMAS lands are not a secret, right? They've
course.
sat in the center of our community, underutilized for a long time. And previous councils didn't have the opportunity we had today because the mill was active, and nobody's going to, try to shut down an active mill site. We had the unfortunate opportunity that was presented with us was a vacant 40-acre mill site in the center of our community, right, in the heart of our community on the waterfront. So our council chose to take action on that.
Oh, okay. So when is it going to get started? That's a question I'm in.
So I'll just go back first, I guess, to put a little bit into context. Many people may not know that the city actually already owns the site. So,
Yes.
we said to people, we are buying the SOMAS lands. I think we said that on, we said that on a Thursday, and we bought the lands that Thursday. So our sale of the SOMAS lands completed very quickly. Of course, there was a lot of work that went on before that, for a long time before that, to get to that point. But we do own the site. A lot of people are not aware of that because the previous owner of the site is still there, active, doing some demolition and removing items from the site. So our contract of purchase and sale says that we actually don't get possession until February. The previous owner is going to be continuing to take some of the existing assets away from the site, do some demolition, and we will get access to the site and have ownership, but also possession as of February. So when will it start? We won't be physically on the site until February 14th, but the work is already underway. So we are already talking about, and we did put out a press release a week or so ago that talked a little bit about our next steps. So we are currently in the process of looking for a contractor to oversee our remediation process. We do expect to remediate the lands and achieve a certificate of compliance on the lands. So we're looking for the right contractor to walk us through that process. There's already been a stage 2 assessment done that determined largely the extent of the contamination that does exist. We've had our own contractor review that information and build a plan around that. So now we're looking for a contractor to actually start carrying out the work. Some of that work will be further testing, and we are permitted to do that while the previous owner has access to, or has possession of the site.
Yeah, you mentioned the contamination. Somebody asked me about that because that land is it contaminated or something?
Yeah,
has there
absolutely.
been tests and stuff like that?
Yeah. So it is absolutely contaminated, and to sit here and say it isn't would be very misleading. It is contaminated. We know that, and I think what I like the community to know is that we did our due diligence prior to taking this land on. So we know it's contaminated, and we also know largely the extent of the contamination because a stage 1 and stage 2 assessment have both been done on the site. Not by us, they were done by the previous owner, and we have had our own consultant that we hired review those, give us estimates on remediation, help us understand the process, and talk about the different approaches. So there is contamination on the site, and we have a plan to deal with it.
So how much of the land is on pylons?
Pilings. So some of the land,
they're not pylons.
Okay.
That wouldn't hold much.
So the land is a mix of fill and pilings, and that's not unlike many other development sites. So I know there's been some talk in the community that you can't develop land on pilings, and that is just not correct.
Well, I wasn't thinking you couldn't develop on it, but I'm thinking if it's toxic, would it just have to be brought all up and then redone, or is it just something that can be repaired?
Yeah, so I don't want to get into the specific details on how the remediation will happen because that's of course not my area of expertise. Okay. What we do know is that we have hired good professionals who have reviewed already and will determine the best path for moving forward. So we've got, like I said, there was a stage 2 assessment done. Some of the lands will be excavated, and much of it does not require excavation. So, and that's determined by the stage 2 and further testing that needs to be done.
So I have a big question. So what realtor did you use to buy this land? Has to be asked.
Thank you for asking that. I know, I think people are aware that my mom is a realtor, and so there's been a lot of accusations that we must have used my mother or a family member as a realtor. We did not use a realtor on this purchase. Because we have been working on this for a long time, we hired a lawyer who negotiated the purchase for us. And of course, this didn't start with us just in negotiations. We've been on this for a long time. Of course, there was the expropriation notice. We were well informed on that. We required a lawyer to go through that process. So that lawyer continued on and represented us in the negotiations.
So when you buy other properties, just to get this out here,
Yeah.
how does this real estate agent thing work?
How often do we use
them?
my mother?
No,
Never.
no. Do you use them, and how does that work?
Yeah.
Like, not
Yeah.
even just your mom. Is it because anybody on council could be related to a real estate agent?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is
It's
it-
a small
am.
town. Yeah.
Oh, okay, there you go. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
is
My
it
niece.
Yes.
is
My
it
niece.
a
Yeah.
straw, or is it a
Yeah.
everybody takes a turn, or
Yeah.
how does it work?
Yeah. So first of all, many purchases and sales of city land we do without realtors. Because typically when you're working with a realtor and just buying a straightforward property, you're looking for, if you're selling your property, you want as much money possible. If you're buying a property, you want to get it for as cheap as possible. The city's needs are a lot more complex than that. If we had a piece of land available for $1 million, somebody could pay us $1 million for it and sit on the land and not do anything with it. We, of course, care about $1 million, but we would rather maybe have somebody pay us $950,000 with a covenant that they're going to develop that land to something that brings high tax value or creates a lot of jobs. So we will often, rather than using a realtor, we will often go through a request for proposal process. It still means somebody has to, and we're in the middle of one of those processes right now where we're not represented by a realtor. It still means somebody has to offer us money for the land, but they don't just have to offer us money, they have to go through a full proposal. They have to tell us exactly what they're going to do. They have to, submit information and submit really a business plan to do it. So
I just
often
wanted to
we
clear
use
it
that
up,
approach,
but
and we do occasionally use realtors as well.
Okay.
We wouldn't use a realtor that any member of council was related to, but we do have a process to go through.
Okay.
Currently, we have a contract with a real estate company. There was a request for proposals that went out to all of the realtors in town to submit to be the city's realtor for a term of, I think, 3 years.
Yeah.
A realtor was selected. I was not a part of that process. I recused myself because of conflict.
And just as an example, there was a councillor, Lyle Price, many years ago. He was a realtor, and he used to say, "I am losing so much money," but because he couldn't participate,
But
he couldn't do
clearly
anything.
he was more concerned about helping the community than
Exactly,
that little bit
and
of
he
money.
backed off.
Yeah.
He wasn't involved in anything to do with selling any property in that. And he used to say that to us all the time.
I just think it's important to get that out there so people aren't, taking.
I think it's important. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally agree.
So why was the SOMAS land so easy to get? Like, were they wanting to give it up because there's something wrong with it? Or these are questions that people have asked.
Before you answer that, how much land are we talking about? Like, how
Yeah,
many
great question.
thousands of acres?
Yeah, so the SOMAS sawmill site itself is about 40 acres.
40, okay.
The parking lot across the street that we also purchased, that was used as a parking lot for the SOMAS sawmill, is about 3 acres. And then we bought an additional 7 acres, which are 3 other properties that all have waterfront value to us. So one of them is a part of a road, one of them is a part of, rail line, and one of them is an existing but underutilized trail that we bought. But they're all in the same vicinity.
Together.
Yeah, so we're
Okay.
trying to make sure that we have as much control as possible to really create the best development for the community, rather than have bits and pieces but not proper access. So 50 acres altogether for the
50
5.3 million
okay.
that we purchased.
So that was just the purchase price for the land. So we're not talking about development cost yet.
No, and we're not intending to be developers. So,
I see.
we do plan to remediate the lands, but we're not planning to be the developer.
Of course.
We may subdivide the lands and sell them off in smaller parcels. I think our council has been really clear that we didn't purchase the lands to hold. I mean, we could have let the previous owner sit on the lands and not see anything happen to them. So, we didn't purchase the lands to hold. We purchased the lands to redevelop.
Okay.
There's a few important things there. We want to resell the land. We've had offers already, not formal written offers, but we've had an incredible amount of interest from developers who would like to buy the lands from us for, we would get our money back. But
And then some.
Yes, and then some,
course.
absolutely, with some of the offers that we've had. But our plan is to first take ownership of the waterfront. So that's I would say a high value to us is to own the waterfront long term for the
And you got to
community.
think about the positive thing too, tax base.
Yeah.
Once things are starting to be built and people are moving in there, like apartments or storefront or whatever's going down there, our tax base is. Yeah, it's a positive.
Yeah.
You got to look
It's
at
a
it.
positive all around. So what are the negatives you have encountered? I mean, people always had something negative to say, no matter what. Like Jesus Christ had his critics.
Yeah.
Even Jesus had his critics.
We certainly have had a lot of questions. For me, it's been overwhelmingly positive from the community. I've heard people say that this is the first time that they've really seen progress happening. This is the first time that they see Port Alberni is going in a different direction. And I keep saying, and our council keeps saying, this is a fundamental change, a fundamental shift to the future of the community. That was a sawmill. That site, I think people saw that as its potential being a sawmill. Now it's going to be something different, and that is a fundamental shift.
The city paid $5.3 million for 5 properties,
Correct.
which total, you just said
50 acres.
50 acres. Reserve funds will pay for initial purchase. Covenant on land sale prevents primary wood processing for 5 years. What does that mean?
So that means that we are not permitted to sell the lands to someone who will just put a sawmill on the site.
Okay, so
for
we're
5
done with
years.
the sawmill
We're
gig
done with
already.
the sawmill on that site.
Finally, we have too many sawmills anyway. Oops, maybe I'll get unpopular for that. All right, next is city will retain waterfront, intend to subdivide and sell remainder.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what she was just
Exactly,
Okay.
and I think that's really important. I think that's something that people have maybe had a hard time really wrapping their minds around, because we see this as an investment in the community, an investment that will have a return on that investment as we sell the land back.
Okay.
So we're not planning to hold it like this $5.3 million that we spent. We do expect to get that money back, or at least a large portion of it, potentially a lot more. We don't know exactly what that will look like yet, but we do know what the value of $5.3 million of waterfront land is, and what the real value of that 50 acres is if it was cleaned and subdivided into smaller parcels.
Don't think that discussion of 5-point-something million wasn't like, oh yes, let's do it.
Yeah,
there
I
was
know.
discussion, a lots of discussion. Okay,
Exactly.
on the whole thing.
Well, there was a comment I read on Facebook earlier, just a few days before we went live, is somebody was saying there should have been a referendum. I mean, really?
Yeah, we didn't borrow, right? So there's no referendum required if we
see.
didn't borrow money. And I think we didn't borrow because we have been talking about this for a long time, because this didn't come out of nowhere, because our council wanted to make sure we had the funds. So we have been strategically selling off non-strategic lands to build up our land sale reserve. So that made it possible. I mean, we sold some lands on Anderson that were underutilized last year, and we made around $1 million on those land. And now homes are being built, which we will collect probably $5,000 a year in taxes from each of those nine or 10 houses that are being built as well. So we're building a tax base there as well. So this didn't come out of nowhere, but our council also really wanted to make sure that we didn't need to tax the community for this move.
That was important.
That was very
Yeah, it
important.
was
very
So
important.
Listen carefully, people who are watching right now. We didn't need to tax, so stop
right.
worrying about your taxes.
And if people are worried about how are we going to put the money back, we will. Eventually,
Yeah, it's
we
already-
will.
it's a
It's
very
going to
feasible-
happen. It's going to happen.
Does the city own the Harbor Key? Not the pier, because I think that's Port Authority, right?
Yeah.
But do you guys own the actual Harbor Key waterfront area?
It's mixed. So we own some of the buildings and some of the land, and the Port Authority owns some of the buildings
all
and
over.
some of the
Okay.
land. It's
So-
scattered. And then, of course, there's a couple private owners as well.
With all of the work that needs to be done at the Harbor Key, like the clock tower, and somebody said replacing
Answer
parts
that.
of a dock. I don't know.
Yeah.
Should we not be focusing on that right now as well, or are you focusing on that and we're just not seeing it?
Yeah,
won't that be part of the plan of the key-to-key thing?
yeah, absolutely. There'll be some improvements
Yep.
that come as a result of key to key. The clock tower work, I believe, began today.
Oh, okay.
So we have a
Tell real time now.
yeah, real time. I think
happening.
I actually want to drive
Finally.
down there and see it with my own eyes, because it's been so long.
But it was going to start earlier, but
Yeah.
we ran into some snags.
Yes, of course. And, there were a few things that happened, a business shutting down that we had paid for artwork from and things like that. But The project is going forward. It is fully funded. We have also applied for a grant to recoup some of our costs. We've also received another grant. So the project is going forward. The clock tower is an icon in our community, and
Yes.
it also sits on the traditional site of the Wolf Village of Sechot. So for us, we're really excited that we are going to be turning the clock tower into what will be called the story tower.
So you still be able to go up it.
You'll be able to go
Okay.
up it, absolutely. And as you're walking up it, you'll be able to read and see artwork, Indigenous
that's
artwork along the
beautiful.
way, and read the stories of what used to happen
that's
with the
very
wolf
cool.
ritual there.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that it becomes even more of an icon in our community. That's something we can all be really proud of.
Yeah.
And I hope it's actually started. 'Cause
Boy, you're going to have a lot of tea.
I'm sure you're
Facebook
gonna
will be
check
very
them out.
upset if it's not actually started, but it was supposed to start
Wait,
today.
Alice just said that.
Okay.
Okay. You got a good contractor for that.
We do.
Right.
We have a local contractor doing the work for it, yes.
Please be patient. More things, the mayor's going to be publicly announcing more things to come, and just there's more things, and we just can't say it at the moment. And I don't know if you want to add to that, Sharie.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Cindy makes a great point, and we really, we try to keep the community engaged and updated on everything that's going on, but a number of the initiatives that, we have worked on over time, the Somas Sawmill being a great example, we are not able to speak publicly to
Yeah.
for a variety of reasons, whether it's in-camera meetings or non-disclosure agreements. We are not able always to answer questions of the public. What we do commit to is bringing these things forward and public as soon as we are able to, and then really trying to engage with the community to help them understand why we're moving forward and gain feedback on ways we can improve our plan. So there is more coming forward that we are very excited about. There's so much happening in this community, and we all feel incredibly fortunate to have the opportunity to help lead. There is an election coming up next year, and it's too soon to talk about that at this point. But I hope that this will be an election issue to determine, is this what we want for the future of the site, or do we want to go back to sawmills? You can't for 5 years, but
Well, Caroline, final words?
I think it's good. I feel like we got a lot of questions asked.
Oh, yeah.
Questions that people had been asking me. I kind of took the time to ask a lot of my customers what they wanted to know, and you've answered them. So I think it's good. I think we should revisit it in 6 months from now and see
More to
where you
come.
are there.
Oh yeah, we have the
Episode
studio
2.
now. This is my gift to Port Alberni, the Rainbow Way Production Studio. We'll have them back, I'm sure, after a few months, and we'll talk about. And we'll be sure to give you a beautiful update on the Key to Key, the waterfront development. And I'd just like to thank you for your time, Madam Mayor and Madam Cindy, who's also a city council and my very award-winning director for Mamma Mia, plugging for the Port Blair.
yes.
I'm so glad I moved to Port Alberni 6 years ago now. 6 years ago. It has been indeed a wonderful Alberni Valley experience. It's getting better and better. We'll catch you next time on The Way.